Good story. I'll be honest with you, like I was really, really pumped up when we kind of got this idea going in 2014. And I remember telling my wife, I'm like, we're gonna, get this business going and we're gonna crush it. As soon as we incorporate, we're gonna have people calling us left and right. What I missed in that is I had spent 17 years working in support and as an engineer and as an architect, and I had never been in sales before. And guess what? Sales don't work that way. It's not like selling a hamburger and people just show up at your door every day. This is a case where in enterprise sales, these are relationships. These are long sales cycles. We incorporated in December of 2014. January came, February came, March came, and it was like, well, we've got some potential leads, but nothing even close to being like a signed contract. And ultimately, it ended up taking us 7 or 8 months before we got our first customer. And it was a scramble to really get there, along with just keeping the patience and the motivation. What happens when you start a business, it's really fun right at the beginning, right? Getting it going, get this big idea, and then you got to get to work. And ultimately, that first piece of work is getting your first sale. And that's a lot of work. And I totally unappreciated that. But we stuck with it. And then it took us another 6 months to get our second one.
I did have a little bit of experience in sales from a sales engineering perspective. So I knew a little bit about sales, but at the same time, I also underappreciated how hard it is to get your first sale. That is the absolute hardest part of starting any business.
What's interesting is after you have your first sale, the next logical things that comes is when you got your first check, right? When you get paid. And our first customer, we'd actually started before we had the official paperwork signed and dotted. We don't do that anymore because the operations team slaps us and says that's not what you're supposed to do. But when you're scrappy and it's your first customer, you do whatever it takes. And so we had worked at our first customer for the first month and ultimately invoiced them. And then I was like, all right, well, we're waiting for the check to come in. And we didn't have a whole lot of cash, right? I mean, we'd cashed out some money out of our retirement and put it in, but we didn't have endless amount of cash. And so, Mac Noland's family and the welfare of my marriage was kind of dependent upon us not running out of cash and getting paid. Unfortunately, our first customer, we had bad terms because we didn't know how to negotiate that very well. And then they didn't pay on time. And so it went to another month and they're like, man, this is going to be tight. Well, finally, my oldest son went out and checked the mail. Dad, I think we got the check. And so he came, running back in and as soon as he hit the driveway, there was a little dip and like he tripped and the check went up. And it went spinning down right into a puddle of water. And so our first check, which was basically needed for my next paycheck, was laying in a puddle of water. And so my wife grabbed it out, and we had the whole family drying it with a hair dryer and stuff like that. And finally, it got it back together where it didn't smudge too much, and it was able to be cashed at U.S. Bank. But that was our first payment, and it got a little dicey there.